All right, Robert, here we are. Politicians.
Watching
dude.
another fiat politician. Let's do it.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm not a very political guy, but I really enjoy watching them grapple with this immovable wall of 21 million that doesn't give a F.
I enjoy making fun of them.
Yeah, let's do it. JD Vance.
Thank you. Thank you all. Well, first of all, I want to thank... Please, thank you guys. Take your seats. And, you know, the Secret Service is a little bit nervous because I told them these Bitcoin guys really like guns. But they really like the President and Vice President of the United States, too, so I think we're doing okay.
No, we don't.
So I first have to thank David Bailey, grateful for everything that you've done for the Bitcoin community. Thanks in particular for what you did for me and the president, helping us get from candidacy to the White House, because we've done, I think, a lot of good in the past 120 days, and I don't think we could have done it without David's support. I want to also thank the Winklevoss brothers, Tyler and Cameron. These guys are out here somewhere. Who, I gotta say, Tyler and Cameron, I think really helped break the dam in Silicon Valley, because if you remember, you go back to June or July of last year, it feels like forever ago, it's not even a year ago, where Silicon Valley, you know, people would whisper in private that they were gonna support Donald Trump for president. They would talk about the fact the Democrats had gone too crazy, we had to get Gary Gensler the hell out of there, but they weren't quite willing to say, at least not publicly, that they were going to take the big step and support Donald J. Trump. And Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss, I think they were some of the first big names in Silicon Valley to take that step, and a whole host of people followed them. So Cameron and Tyler, thank you for that. And of course, I want to thank the good people at Coinbase, the organizers of this.
Didn't know his speech was going to be all ad reads.
It is, dude. It's shitcoin. A lot of shitcoin influence.
Bitcoin at 108,000 at least when I checked this morning, and as Vice President of the United States, it's great to be here.
Have you ever noticed that Brian Armstrong looks like a dick? I'm sorry, I didn't come up with this. I heard somebody refer to him as CEO Phallic.
CEO Phallic. Wow.
I thought that was funny. You know, I'd like him if he wasn't selling all this. I got an email today. Hey, you know what? IC Computer is a top mover in my inbox from Coinbase, advertising all this garbage.
Oh, really? Like selling you a shit coin, basically?
Yes.
Wow. I haven't seen those emails in years, but it doesn't surprise me. Last time I was messing with Coinbase, they only listed Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin.
Uh-huh.
And then they started adding shit coins, and by that time I was off. But
yeah,
they've become a full-blown casino.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate too. I have one of my wife's friends. We were talking a couple of years ago, and my wife is fanatic about Bitcoin now. I come into the room and she's talking to somebody about, you know, Bitcoin. She's asking me, hey, what hardware wallet can we use? And her friend was like, yeah, I bought a bunch of Bitcoin recently that didn't really work out for me well. And I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, yeah, I got some Cardano and some SHIB and whatever. I'm like, what happened? She goes, well, I went on to Coinbase and I just started buying all the different Bitcoins that were cheap. Oh, so that's the issue that I have with, you know, the Winklevoss twins.
That's who they're preying on.
Yes, it's unfortunate.
Now, you guys know I get to meet a lot of exciting people in my job, but it's been quite a while since I've been to a conference with this level of energy. I mean, hell, you guys came out here at 9 a.m. after a long night, I'm sure, in Las Vegas. You can't do that without a lot of good energy. But I promise I'm not just saying that to juice my own meme coins.
Oh my gosh.
But I think it's wrong actually to call this just a conference. This isn't a conference of people. This is a movement, and I'm proud to stand with you here today.
Do you know anything about the etymology of the word conference? It has con, and I'm thinking confidence, con man.
Con means together, to join together. I don't know. Furence, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think this conference, this movement of people is where the future of cryptocurrency in this great country gets decided. So let's start by making one thing abundantly clear. That future is going to be decided by the people, by you, not by unelected bureaucrats.
He'd be 100% right if he said Bitcoin.
As an elected bureaucrat.
Now, as you all probably know, you've got a star-studded lineup here today, including several of my colleagues in the Trump administration. David, Bo, Hester, I know you're all out there. It's great to be among so many friends and allies. So I want to speak for just a few minutes about a few things, and I want to talk a little bit about what we've done in the Trump administration. I want to give you a rundown of what this administration is doing on digital assets policy. But I also want to talk about some of the principles that help guide us as we develop this policy. But before that, I want to speak about why I'm personally optimistic about crypto and what it means for the American people. Now, people ask me why I tend to be bullish on the future of innovation in this country. I spent enough time in Silicon Valley to recognize the
You know, as a Bitcoin maxi, when I hear crypto, I feel like it's like a racial slur.
difference between good tech, technology that boosts our productivity, makes our lives richer, that grounds us in the real world and complements our day-to-day lives. That's the good technology, but there's also some bad technology out there. And when it comes to crypto, I think the last several years have made it clear that we're talking about genuine, ground-up innovation, one that's already improving the well-being of tens of millions of our fellow citizens. I believe it's 50 million Americans own Bitcoin, and I believe that's going to be 100 million before too long.
I think he's right about that.
But it's not just about Bitcoin and about the value that's been generated, the wealth that's been generated by so many millions of our fellow citizens. Through decentralized finance, crypto has transformed how Americans transact with one another. It's expanded access to banking for many who may not otherwise.
No, it hasn't.
No,
There's no such thing as decentralized finance. There is only finance, and it's all centralized, including all ship coins.
Yeah.
We're not cursing today.
We're working on not cursing.
So we're calling them ship coins.
Yes.
That's going to be a hard one.
Because
Because it doesn't rhyme with Bitcoin.
No.
That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Maybe we can call them tit coins?
Tit coins?
No, I like tits.
I do like tits. I call them caca coins every once in a
Cockeye
while.
coins?
It's a little caveman-esque. You know what I mean? But,
Yeah, all right. We need a word that rhymes with bit that isn't S-H-I-T.
yeah.
That is demeaning enough for
Maybe if anybody
ship
has any
coins.
good suggestions, they could put them in the comments.
Yeah, throw them in the comments.
Because we're working
anyways,
on,
this guy is completely full of it because no, decentralized finance, first of all, doesn't exist. Second of all, hasn't increased bank accessibility for anyone, Americans or otherwise. The only thing that's done any of that is Bitcoin.
Yes.
Bitcoin has given people access to uninflatable savings and unconfiscatable savings. That's the
Yeah.
only thing that's happened, period. Everything else has been rug pulls and innovation theater.
Yep.
But no one has the balls to say that yet because they're all on the payroll of those rug pulls and that innovation theater,
Yes.
including this fiat clown before you.
Well, and that's what I hear when I hear him and the Trump brothers. They keep saying crypto, crypto.
Yeah.
What they're talking about is Bitcoin, but they
Right.
keep talking about crypto, and it makes me think of David Bailey shaking hands with Brad Garlinghouse. And it's
That's
like,
right.
what kind of backroom deals are going on so we can include all this crap? You know, and I wanted to ask you about Web3 and then DeFi. Like, I don't understand, what is DeFi? It just sounds like it doesn't even exist. It doesn't make any sense. It's all centralized platforms, so you could basically swap all of these garbage coins.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing I would say about him is like, kudos to him for at least mentioning his sponsors up front. You know, he mentioned the Winklevi, which are Gemini.
Yeah.
That's a shitcoin. Shipcoin casino exchange.
Yep.
So they're selling ship coins to people, which means they're rug pulling people.
Well, those ships sail away with your money.
Coinbase also sells these same ships that sail away with your money.
Yep.
And so no man is better than his incentives. Like, at least he told you up front what his incentives are, right? He's here to slang ship coins.
Yeah.
What is all this stuff? I mean, the operative word is decentralized, right? Stuff like gold is decentralized because it's a naturally occurring commodity. It's available all over the world. No one controls where it was distributed in the Earth's crust. No one controls how you mine it. No one knows how to counterfeit it. So this makes gold and commodities more broadly decentralized. In terms of things that are synthetic, the internet is something that's decentralized, right? It's just the networking of all the computers in the world. And as we've talked about a lot on this show, even Bitcoin itself starts out as a centralized concept. It's just an idea in the mind of Satoshi. And then he releases it into a world where no one cares about Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. And that makes kind of all the difference, being the first mover and releasing something that has basically perfected the properties of money. Gives it the first mover advantage, plus the network effects that come with that, plus the events, the sequence of events that Bitcoin has gone through, like the block size wars of 2017. All of these things serve this path-dependent emergence of Bitcoin, causes its decentralization to emerge as a consequence of all these things. It's not something Satoshi made in the lab.
So is all of that referred to as the Immaculate Conception, or just the beginning parts where Satoshi developed this protocol and then released the white paper, and then people could willingly, on their own time accord or whatever, download the software and start interfacing with it?
Yeah, the Immaculate Conception of Bitcoin, obviously that's a metaphor for the Immaculate Conception of Christ, born from Virgin Mary. And I would say, I guess it's the whole sequence of events is what's being referred to. That can only happen once is basically the gist of it. And you can't, the key point I think is that you can't recreate it in a lab, because that's what all these decentralized in name only ship coins are selling you, is that they have now copied, pasted Bitcoin's decentralization, and they're going to give you the decentralized world computer or the decentralized prediction market or the decentralized this or that. And the reality is that's not fabricatable in a lab. It requires this path-dependent emergence. And so the punchline is like, there's only one use case for a time chain, which are not even called blockchains. This is another word that's been repurposed.
Co-opted.
There's one market-proven use case. There's one instance of product market fit between a time chain and consumers using it, and that is decentralized digital non-state cash. And that's what Bitcoin is. All of these other use cases, they're not decentralized because someone or some company controls them, nor is there any product market fit other than rug pulls, innovation theater, and creating more shit
coins on people.
Exactly. So this is the whole Bitcoin maximalism ethos in a nutshell.
Yep. I love it.
Guys have had it. And every single day, I feel like I see some groundbreaking new use of blockchain tech, whether it's in supply chain management, whether it's in hospitals.
Okay, that right there, this whole idea of blockchainifying the world, they're inefficient databases, and the only market-chosen use case for that is for the money, right?
Yeah, the decentralization of the Bitcoin time chain is what makes it resistant to manipulation or censorship or reversal. So it only applies to money, basically.
Yeah.
You can't blockchainify anything else because, first of all, it's not decentralized. Second of all, if it was decentralized and you were using the Bitcoin time chain to, say, tokenize a real world asset or supply chain or hospital or whatever he's mentioning here, you have the Oracle problem, which is, as Nick Szabo says, time chain preserves truths and lies equally. Like once it gets into that, he calls it like digital amber. If you've ever seen Jurassic Park, where they have the mosquito in the layers of amber, it's trapped in tree sap millions of years ago, and there's just layers and layers and layers of it. That's kind of how the time chain works. Once it confirms a block of transactions, and it gets buried under layers and layers and layers of blocks, and the deeper it is, the more blocks you have subsequent to the transaction, the higher probability you have of its irreversibility. So typically they say wait 6 confirmations, 6 additional blocks to make sure your transaction is finalized, basically, right? So that it preserves truth and lies equally. The Oracle problem is who arbitrates what goes in, what records go into that time chain. And so once you go into the real world, hospitals, supply chains, Beanie Babies, whatever the thing is, you have to now, you've reintroduced the need to trust someone. The that they have faithfully recorded information into the time
Yes.
chain that's being preserved in that digital amber. That's problematic. So far as we know, that's unsolvable.
Yeah.
Like maybe it's solvable. We haven't figured it out yet, right? The Byzantine generals problem that Bitcoin solved was unsolvable for a very long time.
Yeah.
But we did solve it. Satoshi solved it. Thank you, Satoshi. But for now, Oracle problem is unsolvable. Therefore, all of these other blockchainify this, blockchainify that,
Yeah.
they're complete BS. It's not possible
Yeah.
until you solve the Oracle problem. Bitcoin's unique because it's just digitizing you're basically using energy inputs as lottery tickets into this game of solving a mathematical puzzle that is Bitcoin mining that rewards the newly issued Bitcoin every 10 minutes.
Right.
So it's basically just digitizing raw energy.
Yeah.
So you don't suffer from the Oracle problem because it's a distributed, decentralized game.
Right.
But you can only play that game with raw energy. You can't play it with any other real world asset.
Gotcha. And then so when you say it can record both truth and lies, I think about Bitcoin as this
You could
machine.
go write stuff on the Bitcoin time chain now.
Right.
You could say whatever. My name is Amber. You know, well, my name's Robert, so that's a lie. But I could write that in the Bitcoin time
Right.
chain, and that can get solidified, and that can live on the time chain forever. It doesn't make
Right.
it true, right? Because the Oracle problem hasn't been solved, and you can't trust me when I say my name is Amber. Basically,
Right.
Same is true if I say, oh yeah, this gold is on the blockchain, or this Beanie Baby is on the blockchain.
Yeah. So it's a record of the truth of what happened, but within that can be things that aren't true.
It's the record of an attestation or an assertion or a proposition that someone has recorded.
Yeah.
Right. I have 100 ounces of gold in my safe. Okay, cool. How do we audit that? How do we know that? Like just because you wrote it in the time chain and it's there permanently, your statement is. But
Yeah.
how do we know that the gold is actually there? You can't. This is
Yeah.
the Oracle problem.
So I think of like when, you and Kaysen in these HODL hangouts, you guys will often talk about how Bitcoin is capital T truth. What do you mean?
In that it's an unalterable database. So like it's a record of transactions that can't be altered, right? This is getting steadily in deeper layers of this digital amber metaphor. So once it's 6 confirmations plus deep, it's probabilistically unchangeable, right? So that's one sense of it. It's also open source code. So everything that is Bitcoin is openly inspectable. Anyone you can see everything in it. So you can't hide anything in it. So it's like a language in which the code that makes up Bitcoin is like a language in which things cannot be hidden. This is true of open source projects generally. Right? You can't hide things when everyone can see everything.
Right.
Right? It's radical transparency. So it's those two things. There's also there's different definitions of truth. There's a definition of truth as like an accurate portrayal of reality. So it is an accurate portrayal of reality in that it's a record of these consensual transactions that cannot be changed. But it's also, because it's a fixed supply asset, it maps onto, so it's absolutely scarce. It maps onto the absolute scarcity of time itself, so before Bitcoin, the only asset in the world that was absolutely scarce is time, effectively. And so it's truthful in that way, that it's a money, we all know that time is money. So it's a money that perfectly reflects the absolute scarcity of time. There's also the sense of truth as in what is found at the end of inquiry. This is like this American pragmatist sense of truth that we can never capture truth in like its totality in our words or propositions, but what we can do is get to something that's maximally useful, and that's considered to be true enough.
Yeah.
And so there's the sense of Bitcoin too that it's the most useful money. It's like idealized or perfected money.
Yeah.
And so that's why the market is selecting it. The
And
market.
so there's no distortion in what everybody agrees upon.
Basically, yeah. Like, you could say, when I look at linguistic constructs like mathematics, the number 0 is truthfully the centerpiece of Hindu Arabic numerals, which are the mathematics we all use today.
Yeah.
There's not much argument about that, right? It's like almost true by definition. It's like, well, this is the language we speak, and this is the centerpiece to the whole thing. And so Bitcoin sort of functions like that in the language of money, right? It's like it's maxed out all of the properties of money so that it is, and the market process is a process of inquiry, right? People are inquiring about what tool is best for the job. And that's why I think Bitcoin is the fastest growing asset in human history, because in that process of inquiry, people are discovering, oh, wow, this is the perfect money or the most ideal money. I don't like the word perfect either, but it's the closest thing we've had to perfect money. Let's say that.
And it's significantly better than everything that's come before it.
That's right. And so through that process of inquiry, people, in acting in their own individual self-interest, everyone is coalescing on Bitcoin as being the ideal money. So there's another sense of the word truth, right? It's found at the end of inquiry.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin is being discovered in this ongoing process of market inquiry. And then there's the definition of truth, which is like radical disclosure or unconcealedness, which again goes back to the open source software thing. Like it's purely unconcealed. You can't hide anything in it. There's nothing, there's no black boxes in Bitcoin. It's absolutely open source.
Yep. I love it. Thank you for that explanation.
Or whether it's in changing how we track and store patients' private health records. But for each of these new forward-looking applications, I also feel like there's an incredibly conservative element to crypto technology, and that's as a hedge. Crypto is a hedge against bad policymaking from Washington, no matter what party is in control. It's a hedge against skyrocketing inflation, which has eroded the real savings rate of Americans over the last 4 years. And as you all know well, it's a hedge against a private sector that's increasingly willing to discriminate against consumers on the basis of their basic beliefs, including their politics.
That last one was very weird. Hedge against the private sector. That doesn't make any sense. First of all, I'm interpreting whatever he says about crypto is just Bitcoin.
Yeah. So I got to do the same thing.
We'll just blanket say that.
Yeah.
But hedging, which means like to mitigate the risk or exposure to something. How was Bitcoin mitigating your exposure to the private sector? That doesn't make any sense at all. But he's also probably misidentifying the private sector. If the private sector is someone that's, I don't know, I guess I'll let him talk. But
he might be referring to just the skewed incentives that fiat creates.
Yeah.
And this zero-sum business dynamic that unfolds while you're being debased and your cost of operating is increasing on average at a faster rate than you can increase your margins.
Yes.
And then so now you have to dilute the quality of your product. Just like I'm ordering luggage, or I don't know, I got a table the other day and I come in, this table comes in, it's for my kid, and I'm like, wait a second, this isn't real wood, it's a veneer. It's literally printed to look like it's real, and it's particle board.
Particle board from China, of course. Yeah, and that is a fiat consequence. Prices go up, quality goes down.
Yeah.
So if that's what he's talking about, that has nothing to do with the private sector. That has to do, well, it's the private sector being corrupted by fiat.
Yes.
I guess you could say that.
That includes, of course, debanking users for Second Amendment advocacy or for ties to the first Trump administration. In Canada, the government did the same to kill those big truck driver protests in 2022. Less than a week later, they succeeded. The protests were over. But maybe most importantly, I see crypto as a hedge against one of the most dangerous trends in the digital era in both the public and private sectors. And that's of elites who, rather than innovate themselves, prefer to simply take over and co-opt cutting-edge technologies to assert their control over other people.
That's the centralizing force that fiat incentivizes. I kind of think about in the business world, you either want to become the biggest fish or get gobbled up and bought out by the biggest fish.
Yeah. Get too big to fail or die trying.
Yeah.
And I know we believe this in this room. That's not Bitcoin. It'll never be Bitcoin. And you guys are going to make sure that happens. But as you know, there's a new sheriff in town because after 4 years of mistreatment and outright hostility led by Democrat regulators, lawmakers in this country have a choice. Will we lead our nation into a future of financial sovereignty, of innovation, and of prosperity, or will we let unelected bureaucrats and foreign competitors write the rules for us? And I'm here today to say loud and clear, with President Trump crypto finally has a champion and an ally in the White House.
Did you see the document for the SBR on the whitehouse.org page? When it first happened, that was like flying around on Twitter, and it basically says that they're going to take all the Bitcoin that the government has, they're going to hold on to it, and they can come up in a budget neutral way with a strategy to acquire more Bitcoin, and they can't sell the Bitcoin. And then digital assets, they can seize it and they can sell it, and they're not going to acquire more. So I read that and I'm like, okay, so they're going to dump everything and put it into Bitcoin.
Yeah. I had good advice.
In our administration, we understand the full potential of the
They might
digital
listen to What
assets
Is Money
industry,
show.
not just as an investment, not just as a flashy technology, but as a symbol and driver of personal liberty for all our citizens. And we are dedicated to seeing that promise fulfilled. The way that we see it, the people in this room are the digital pioneers of the American economy. And that's why our administration is doing something a little unusual in Washington. We're listening to all of you as you blaze the trail of innovation.
They don't have a choice. So I love this, but like once again, they're grappling with something that they have zero control over. So it's this Darwinian like economic thing that's unfolding, and so I like to see them embracing it as opposed to fighting it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they don't really have the choice ever, but sometimes they pretend to have the choice of whether or not to listen to the market. But ultimately, the people always have the power. The market always has the power.
Yeah.
But yeah, people surrender some of that power in the form of purchasing power via taxation and inflation.
Yeah.
And then these guys use it to project the illusion that you somehow live under their control. But that's not the truth.
Yeah.
You ever seen the meme where it's like the politician's on the end of a plank and he's talking on some speaker and then everyone's standing on the plank to prevent it from falling off the edge? Like that's the dynamic. we live in.
Yeah.
The innovators in this room are making people's lives better. You're pushing boundaries and solving problems, injecting unprecedented transparency into how we do commerce. And the way we see it, you all deserve a similar level of transparency and clarity. And most of all, you deserve respect and support from your government, not bureaucrats trying to tear you down.
The only respect and support we need is to abolish the Fed and abolish the IRS, all taxation and all inflation, and end the state.
Word to that.
Now that means a few substantive concrete steps. And of course, the first and most important of those steps is straightforward. We've got to clean up the wreckage that the last administration left us. And since day one, that is exactly what we've been trying to do.
This is what they say every election cycle. Every politician who has ever existed in the history of fiat democratic politics says the same thing.
Yeah.
We are cleaning up the mess from the last administration. And this is the puppet show that's put in front of people, right? When I use puppet show metaphor, it's like the puppets appear to be, antagonistic and arguing with one another, but the reality is they're both controlled by the same hands.
Yeah.
Those hands are the shareholders of central banks.
Yep.
This is, I heard it put very funny the other day that fiat politics is the entertainment division of central banking, basically.
Oh yeah, like
this
that.
is all a show. That's why I don't like watching it. It's like, I gotta go kill some brain cells and watch the puppets for a little while. But if it's useful to people, we'll watch it.
Our administration, we prioritize eliminating the rules, the red tape, and the lawfare that we saw aimed at crypto by our predecessors. We're ending the weaponization of federal regulations against this community. To put it simply, Operation Choke Point 2.0 is dead, and it's not coming back under the Trump administration.
I like how these guys all talk like they could actually do something to stop this.
No.
And by the way, it's crazy that was ever even controversial, the idea of using the regulatory power of the government to crush an industry and to crush people who espoused a view that you didn't like. It's crazy, but let my words today serve as Operation Choke Point. Let me serve as its obituary. Now this is my vow to every single person here. You will never see this administration trying to handicap your community or diminish the impact it's had on the economy. Instead, we reject the Biden administration's legacy of death by 1,000 enforcement actions. We reject regulators. Maybe the most important thing that we did for this community, we reject regulators and we fired Gary Gensler, and we're going to fire everybody like him.
Maybe they could get rid of the driver's license program here in Florida. That has been.
And we know that people like Gary Gensler, the game that they played is that under the pretense of consumer protection, they attacked every single effort to democratize our financial markets, and that is over. America. I grew up in a working class family. I believe that America is a place where anyone should be able to make a fortune, no matter where you grew up, what degree you may or may not have. And in recent years, I'm hard-pressed to think of a better place to do so than right here in the digital assets industry. Now, our second substantive step is we're trying to create a clear, pro-growth legal framework for stablecoins in this country. And I know we've got some solid allies in Congress. Is Cynthia Loomis out there today, or did she already go home? Well, you know, I was supposed to have dinner last night with Cynthia Loomis. We had a little event yesterday, and I looked around, I said, where the hell is Cynthia Loomis? And somebody said, well, she's got a dinner she had to go to. And I said, I'm the vice president. Unless she's having dinner with the president, Cynthia does not have an excuse to skip this event. But we love Cynthia, and I know that she's one of the great advocates.
There's a little Freudian slip for you right there.
Yeah.
The fucking ego power trip. Sorry. Flipping ego.
Flipping.
It's just ego maniacal. Like what? Who cares? Who cares who you are? I don't care where you are in the fiat political hierarchy. Invite me to dinner. I'm going to send you a card with a middle finger on it.
It's for
And a link to the Sailor Series.
In the United States Congress.
Well, I've been invited. I got invited to so many of these stupid things in D.C. before all this.
Yeah.
When Trump was elected, they were having all these crypto dinners and blah, 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 and like Bitcoin media is all up in there. Like, no.
Yeah.
Blanket no to all that stuff.
Now I know.
And just because I don't want to spend my life like that.
Yeah.
That sounds like a terrible time to me.
You'd be an interesting
Go
president.
hobnob with these, like talk to these people that I spiritually am completely aligned against.
Yeah.
That sounds like the worst night of my life.
Not enjoyable, huh?
And it doesn't necessarily serve my self-interest because then I get into certain situations like, oh, it'd probably be useful to have a friend like that right now.
Yeah.
But anyways, there's the struggle.
Led by Cynthia and other great legislators, Congress is hard at work getting the Genius Act passed and across the president's desk as quickly as possible.
The Genius Act? Is that a real thing?
I don't know what it is.
And that's an important step. It's with
But by the law of legislation naming, I can almost guarantee you it's completely retarded.
good reason, because regulatory uncertainty in this country has pushed way
The Genius Act could be summed up in one sentence: buy Bitcoin.
Yeah.
too much stablecoin activity overseas over the last few years. Now, somebody said to me yesterday,
Is it real?
It's real, and I think that Robert was spot on.
This is the Idiot Act.
The Genius Act aims to regulate stablecoins and peg the U.S. dollar to a federally regulated stablecoin.
Oh, so it's a
for insurance legislation.
It's a CBDC backdoor. sounds like.
Yeah. You know, when I think about stablecoins, I think about Michael Saylor and how he says that over time, all currencies will collapse into the dollar and all property will collapse into Bitcoin. And as that happens at some point, then people are going to be like, well, I can take this property and instead of converting it to digital dollars and buying something, I can just use the property to buy the things. That's the path of least resistance. So I feel like Bitcoin ultimately replaces the dollar, which he hasn't been saying. I kind of feel like his strategy has evolved a little bit. We don't have the same Sailor we did a couple of years ago, but partially I think what he's doing is just kind of helping usher in this Trojan horse.
Yeah. And in the Trojan horse, you have to be quiet.
Yeah.
today that Bitcoin has done so much over the last few years with so many headwinds. Wouldn't it be nice to have a government that provided some tailwinds to one of the fastest growing industries in our country? And that's what we aim to do. And once
there are no tailwinds the government can ever provide to any market whatsoever other than
Get out of the
going
way.
away.
Genius Act is enacted, it's poised to vastly expand the use of stable coins as a digital payment system for millions of our fellow Americans. It'll also protect coin holders and inject further transparency into the market. And let me be emphatic on one other point. In this administration, we do not think that stable coins threaten the integrity of the United States dollar. Quite the opposite.
What integrity?
Yeah, I should clarify. So specifically what they want to do is provide a federal regulatory framework for the issuance and use of stablecoins.
Yeah. It's the same thing though. It's a segue from analog dollar to CBDC dollar, basically.
Yeah.
CBDC being central bank digital currency, or a digital version of the dollar. The dollar today is still like digital, but it's an SQL database maintained on reserve on premise at the Federal Reserve. And so they just basically want to turn that into they're trying to integrate stablecoin tech into that 1980s database model.
So would that kind of be like the main chain database, if that to like make the correlation?
Well,
and then
it's a one node database.
Yeah, but then every bank has their own ledger that would be kind of, you could think about as a layer on top of this original dishonest ledger.
That's right. There are layers on top of the one node database.
Yeah.
And the one node database is updated by 7 dudes, basically. Yeah.
In fact, we view them as a force multiplier of our economic might. Dollar-pegged stablecoins, particularly once Genius is enacted, is only going to help the American economy, and it's only going to help the American dollar. So, again, we're optimistic that the Senate is able to move quickly on passing a clean Genius Act.
There is some truth to that, and that can make dollars much more accessible globally.
Yeah.
With this, which can create more reservation demand for the dollar, which is more people holding dollars worldwide, which does strengthen the dollar. So it's an imperial play, basically.
Well, it also drives people into Bitcoin, because if you're in Venezuela, you want dollars instead of Bolivar.
Yeah.
But if you have dollars everywhere and you realize, hey, I want to save dollars for the next 5 years so I can buy a house for my family, then now I need to get out of the dollars and into something that's stronger, which is going to drive people into Bitcoin.
That's right. And then, yeah, you're also like greasing the rails in a way. Like once you get people in these digital rails, and they're now, who knows how much these things are going to be gate kept. I assume a lot. But once you can get between, Fed coin, whatever that is, and USDC, for instance, which is like a, US dollar stable coin that's private, and then you get liquidity to BTC.
Yeah.
As this thing starts to inflate more and more, which it definitely will, because humans can't quit printing money, that people have easier, less friction access to go from Fed coin to USDC to BTC.
Yeah. Well, then there's something else, and I could be entirely wrong about the details here, but it's my understanding that Tether is becoming a major buyer of T-bills.
Yeah.
So as people are buying Tether, then Tether's taking those dollars and they're buying T-bills.
That's right.
And Bitcoin, from what I understand.
Well, they're stacking their treasury, and that's why it's an insanely profitable business, because it's like it's basically digitally replicating the pyramid scheme that is the US dollar, just on stablecoin rails. Yeah. And that's why it's been an insanely profitable business. Like it's mirroring the profitability of central banking just on new rails.
And at hyper rate.
Well, yeah. I mean, they've been doing it. You're basically printing money, right? Like, so people are giving you dollars, then you can put that in T-bills and you get the yield for free. And then you can use the yield to buy more T-bills or to stack Bitcoin or whatever.
So this bond market collapse that some people talk about, the stable coins are helping to mitigate the potential of that.
That I don't know.
I
don't know enough about the mix of that collapse. But suffice it to say, stable coins are only stable against fiat, and fiat is not very stable.
So there is only one stable coin.
There is only one stable coin.
Yeah.
One BTC equals one BTC. And people that think that's like a tautology,
or
just like like what? What do you mean? One USD equals one USD? Like, think about that again.
Yeah.
1 USD in terms of purchasing power does not equal 1 USD in terms of purchasing power. $1 today, when I was growing up, $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow.
Yes.
Like it was ingrained in everyone's mind that, of course, these things inflate. You should spend it now. Don't save it.
Yep.
That is the truth of all fiat currencies. BTC is the opposite. A BTC today is worth less than a BTC tomorrow.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I'm not saying that with exact precision, but like Bitcoin is engineered to go up in purchasing power. Fiat currency is engineered to go down in purchasing power.
It's a pump scheme.
Pump scheme. Because there's no better asset to dump it into.
Totally.
And for the House to follow up and do the same. And of course, once that happens, our great President Trump will sign it into law the minute it comes across his desk.
You know, on that note too, when people tell me, "What you have all your money in Bitcoin? It's so volatile." I'm like, no. It's everything else that's volatile. Bitcoin doesn't change when it crashes from 67 to 15K. It's the liquidity and all the chaos and confusion that's caused by fiat.
It's true. I mean, to play devil's advocate, like, because people are thinking in terms of like, how much does my rent cost next month? How much does the beef cost? How much does the milk cost? Right.
Yeah.
And so Bitcoin being a $2 trillion asset competing for a $250 trillion market space, it is volatility is a natural function of price discovery. So the smaller the market, the more it's going to move in terms of purchasing power. So your milk could either get way cheaper next month or become way more expensive.
Yeah.
So if you want short-term purchasing power stability, that's what fiat tends to offer, right? Month over month, dollar prices stay roughly the same.
Yeah.
Long purchasing power stability is a whole different thing. 10 years, you can guarantee cost you a lot more dollars to buy, just it's going to cost you a lot less Bitcoin.
So Bitcoin is exposing the volatility within our current financial system.
Yeah, and it's like an irrepressible barometer of that volatility.
Yes.
The more we print and the more, as we print, we debase the integrity of the US dollar, to use that fallacious term. You create more demand for Bitcoin as an off-ramp to that chaos. And then it also, so that puts upward pressure on the price, but you also get less meaningful price signals from the dollar itself. So everything priced in dollars becomes more volatile.
Yeah.
And you could look at stock market over the past 20 years, denominated in dollars, and look at its volatility. You can do this with like trading chart tools online and whatnot. Then do the same thing in gold and look at its volatility.
Or just adjust for M2.
Or adjust for M2.
Yeah.
So a lot of the volatility is a consequence of the money printing. It's not. It's
and it's controlling the rate in which new money is issued. When they raise the interest rate, it's slowing down that spigot of newly minted currency.
That's
when they
one of the
reduce
policy
it,
tools.
it's increasing it.
That's right. That's
So as
one of the policy tools.
Yeah.
They also just print money. Like it's not just interest rate adjustment. You know, 2008, literally quantitative easing is what they call it, right? Bailout packages, all the shit, $700 billion.
Right.
2020, 8 trillion. That's 8,000 billion. So that's more than a 10x, right? It's like a 12, 13x, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So every time, and this is a pretty standard historical pattern, that it increases by like an order of magnitude. Each time there's an economic crisis, they print 10x more money than they did last time.
So in 15 years, we could be looking at 80 trillion.
I think the next major catastrophe will be in the $80 trillion range.
Holy moly.
And that is going to absolutely melt faces. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And when the price of, a gallon of milk goes to $300 a gallon, like that's what we're talking about here.
Now, when that's happened, when the administration will then fully shift to our third priority, which is to enact a transparent and tailored regulatory framework for digital assets. One that's pro-innovation and fully incorporates crypto into the mainstream economy.
Isn't Bitcoin the regulator?
Yeah. The ungovernable governor of governments.
Oh, I love that.
Again, he's completely talking out of his ass. Like, he's completely talking out of his bunghole. You can't create regulatory frameworks which are themselves violations of private property that anyway enhance innovation or productivity in any way. No matter what you do, by definition, it is impeding innovation and productivity. It's just like when was this, a year ago? The Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah, I know.
They're printing money for the Inflation Reduction Act. Like, that's, if you don't know you're in clown world at that point, I don't think there's much hope for you.
Yep.
But he's saying the same thing here, basically.
And again, I've talked to so many of you over the last couple of days, and the consistent fear that I hear with all the great things that have happened over the last couple of months, the consistent fear that I hear is that there's still this perception that digital assets are not welcome in the mainstream economy. And let me promise you that our effort to change the policy is purely about changing that. We want our fellow Americans to know that crypto and digital assets, and particularly Bitcoin, are part of the mainstream economy and are here to stay.
This is called orange washing. When he says, this shitcoin project and that shitcoin project, and particularly Bitcoin, he's trying to piggyback off of the, what would be the word here of Bitcoin? The substantiality of it, the good reputation of it, like the fact that it is legitimately the one asset that's not a scam, and all of
The
these
credibility
assets,
it commands.
the credibility. Thank you.
Yeah.
So piggybacking on the credibility of Bitcoin and sort of orange washing it on all these other projects.
When he says digital assets, I'm like, just what digital assets? Like when you compare it by market cap, I mean,
Well, there is no digital asset. This is the thing. I mean, there's no.
Like people hear this and they're like, oh, my XRP.
Yeah.
Oh, my Cardano.
I know.
Like what? Yeah.
They're all confidence games at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so, when the tide goes out, you see who's swimming naked. And the tide has gone out so many times in the Bitcoin world, where actually the crypto world, we'll say more broadly, out of like 30,000 of these, I saw this study done a couple of years ago. There were like one or two that maybe didn't go to zero in Bitcoin terms. When I say zero, I mean like effectively zero. They trade down to like an illiquid market cap that no one's paying attention to them. XRP is one of the exceptions, actually, because they've been using the stolen proceeds to infiltrate politicians and get them to pump it harder and use bots.
And I could be wrong about this, but I think I saw a chart recently on XRP. I think is the same price today it was in like 2017 or 2019.
Probably, yeah.
Wild.
So anyways, yeah, to your point, Bitcoin is the only digital native asset in existence that's not a scheme. Right? It's not based on the confidence of people holding it. Right? You're actually, and it's somewhat hard to delineate because money itself, Naval is called money the bubble that never pops. It's like people do coalesce to a thing called money that sufficiently satisfies those 5 properties of money, but it never pops because people always need money.
Right.
So there's like, you could say gold is a confidence game in a way, but it's the confidence game that outcompeted all the other confidence games.
Right.
People have confidence in gold because it best satisfies the properties of money.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin best satisfies the properties of money, so people have confidence in it. Everything else is a confidence game.
Yes.
Which means it's just it's snake oil ultimately.
Yeah, and that's kind of like there's nothing better. So if Bitcoin ripped to $10 million a coin tomorrow, I'm not going to unload my Bitcoin to buy anything else. There's nowhere better to put the Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's the thing about money is that it is a universal medium of exchange. So you can buy anything you want.
Yeah,
so if you decide, hey, it's $10 million and I want a yacht now or a house, it's like, well, great. You might sell some of your Bitcoin to buy the thing of your dreams.
Yeah.
But as someone who understands, basically the properties of money and the game of money, if you were going to continue holding money, you wouldn't sell your Bitcoin for any other money.
Right.
You might sell it for something you want, a consumable consumer good or a capital good, but you're not going to sell it for another form of money because that would be.
Yeah, one of the things I heard you say actually that just blew my mind is that money's a call option on any good or service the marketplace can produce. So it effectively has infinite demand, and it's essentially the only thing in the marketplace that has infinite demand. And if you couple that with true scarcity, now you got the apex monetary instrument.
That's basically it, yeah. Yeah, so long as, the human heart is never satisfied. People always want more, no matter what you have. And so money is the closest you can get to that. If you hold money, it's an option on anything the market can produce.
Yeah.
So it has effectively infinite demand. Now you couple that with absolutely finite supply, and you get the pump scheme we call Bitcoin.
Yes. It's brilliant.
Now, we think the way to do that legislatively, because again, I hope that our party is in charge for a long time, but nothing is ever guaranteed in politics. So the best way to ensure that crypto is part of the mainstream economy is through a market structure bill that champions and doesn't restrict the extraordinary value that Bitcoin and other digital assets represent. Right now, in this Congress and with this administration, we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to unleash innovation and use it to improve the lives of countless American citizens. But if we fail to create regulatory clarity now, we risk chasing this $3 trillion industry offshore in search of a friendlier jurisdiction, and President Trump is going to fight to make sure that does not happen. Think about this. By locking in smart, pro-innovation rules of the road, we can also make sure that Democrats or anybody else never wage another war on the crypto community. Now, I've already hit my time here, but before I head back to Washington, let me offer you just a few bits of advice and a few thoughts on where this industry is going. This is one politician's perspective, so take it for what it's worth. Maybe a little bit less than one Bitcoin right now. But let me say a few things. First of all, I remember when I ran for Senate.
Dude, this guy is so arrogant.
He is.
I'm the vice president. How you turning down dinner with me?
He's pretty satisfied with himself.
One politician's perspective worth about one Bitcoin. Like, what?
Yeah. Well, he's got, apparently he has, I could be wrong, but it's my understanding he's got a decent Bitcoin position. Maybe it's amplifying his confidence.
Still, dude. Like, ugh.
First time I'd ever entered politics back in 2022. And one of the frustrations, honestly, that I had with the crypto community as a person who was one of the only people running for office who actually owned Bitcoin, and I still own a fair amount of Bitcoin today. Think about this. This is during that campaign, that's 2021 and 2022. This it feels like an eternity ago, but it was only 4 years ago, is that I recognized what so many advocates of Bitcoin recognize, which is what the Biden administration was doing. What Gary Gensler was doing was a disaster, and yet there didn't seem to be any real organization pushing back against it at the political level. And let me say that part of the reason that I'm standing here, part of the reason that Bernie Moreno defeated Sherrod Brown in the Senate campaign last year is because you guys got organized and got involved in American politics, and I'm grateful to you for that. But there's a lesson to take from that experience, which is that unless you guys get involved in politics, politics is going to ignore this industry. Now, you took a big...
So you're saying we shouldn't get involved with politics?
I'm going to need some MindLab Pro when this is done, dude.
Yeah, like, whew, wow. The level of stupidity to say that if we Bitcoiners don't get organized and get involved with politics, then politics is going to ignore Bitcoin. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You guys haven't been ignoring, there's all political power parasitizes on purchasing power. That's what it is. That's what it does. That's what it needs to survive. It is a parasite on the host of the marketplace.
Yes.
Bitcoin is a product of the marketplace, not of politics.
Yeah.
So let that be clear, Mr. Vance.
Uh-huh.
We would prefer if you left us all alone completely and went away completely. And then your presence at this conference is an unfortunate but perhaps inevitable consequence of Bitcoin monetizing. Because if something becomes big and shiny and valuable, you can bet your rear end that the politics are coming.
You know, and I've thought about this a little bit. Like, do we want to prevent the government from getting involved in Bitcoin? Like, they're going to get involved in Bitcoin. So in some sense, the sooner that Bitcoin moves through and into and through and past the government,
that's right,
the better.
It's dissolving the government by decreasing its revenues over time, basically.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think you can't really stop it. I wouldn't fight it. I'm not saying try to keep them out of it. You know, that keeps us in this sort of us versus them dichotomy, which is not very useful. And hopefully Bitcoin transcends, right? We start acting like a human race, humanity. But you can make fun of them.
Totally.
Ad nauseum. Like, just keep calling them out. Oh, sorry, I'm banging the table again. The emperor has no clothes.
At least we're not dropping a bunch of F-bombs.
We're doing our flipping best.
Yeah.
Step in 2024. And I tell you, every victory that we win, it's only a provisional victory. One of my great mentors in Silicon Valley always told me that, Bitcoin, that the crypto community was about exit and artificial intelligence was about voice. Well, I know that a lot of people in 2024 in this community chose voice. You chose to speak up and you chose to get involved. And I believe you changed the direct trajectory of our country because of it. But you got to keep on choosing voice. Bitcoin, of course, people call it digital gold. But while Bitcoin is digital, none of you are. None of us are. What happens in the world of politics, what happens in the world of bureaucracy, it will affect even the most transformational and valuable technologies if we don't make the right decisions. So the first piece of advice, the first thing that I'd ask you is to take the momentum of your political involvement in 2024 and carry it forward to 2026 and beyond. Don't ignore politics, because I guarantee you, my friends, politics is not going to ignore this community, not now and not in the future.
That contradicts what he just said.
Yeah?
That literally contradicts what he just said. No, earlier he said if we don't organize and get involved in politics, and politics is going to ignore us. Now he's saying, well, let me tell you what, politics is never going to ignore this community. Well, which one is it? Once again, he's contradicting himself.
They're going to roll out the orange carpet for Bitcoiners.
I honestly are.
I'm looking.
They already are. That's why he's holding these crypto dinners. They were, by the way, the tickets were like $2,500 to $5,000 each.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
they're just like, it's a game, man. And they're like, people. I feel so bad because people think that, oh my goodness, I was invited to a Trump dinner. I can't. This is so exciting. It's only $5,000 a ticket. I'm like, are you retarded? Like, you're just gonna give money away to go like snuggle up to the teat of political power? Like, it's just not.
It's people that have lost the plot of what Bitcoin is.
You can snuggle up to the most political power that we've ever had in human history by figuring out how to hide 12 words.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. That's
and I also,
political
I hear
power.
this and I think that he keeps talking about crypto and all this stuff. And it's like, I'm starting to tell people, I have a friend who called me the other day and asked a couple questions about Bitcoin. I'm like, look, you need to move forward in your life under the idea that everyone is going to try to figure out how to get your Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Like, that is it. No matter what the path is, they're going to try to figure out how to get your Bitcoin.
There's a piece written in 2014, Everyone's a Scammer. Mm-hmm. It's a good piece, actually. Like,
Really?
It doesn't mean, like, to say, when you say everyone's a scammer, it means no one's a scammer, right? Like, the word loses all of its meaning. But the point of the piece is that everyone operates out of their own individual self-interest. And that Bitcoin, that's what makes Bitcoin succeed, is that it maximally serves individual self-interest. That's why the whole world is slowly coalescing on it as the ultimate financial instrument.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like what you're saying. It's like, yes, everyone's going to be trying to get your Bitcoin. Now, that sounds bad maybe, but when you come to understand that if you custody Bitcoin properly, they can't seize your Bitcoin.
They can only get your Bitcoin by entering into a consensual deal with you and serving your self-interest in some other way.
Yeah.
And that's where Bitcoin tilts the whole landscape of human incentives away from taking towards making.
Yes.
So it's a good thing, actually. You want
It is. If you go out on the streets, if you want what I have, you better come correct. Is it better offer up a deal or something that I'm interested in?
That's a good way to put it. Bitcoin incentivizes everyone to come correct.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting watching the government bend the knee and then act like they're not.
Yeah, well, they're still trying to project the air of authority, but let's give it a couple more election cycles. We'll see.
Yeah.
See who's blowing who.
The second thing that I want to toss out there is that we have to start thinking of the long-term strategic implications of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is owned by about 50 million Americans. A lot of Americans have made a lot of money, have created a lot of wealth for themselves, and that's a great thing. But I actually think that where Bitcoin is going is as a strategically important asset for the United States over the next decade. It's one of the reasons why President Trump, with the help of our great AI guy, David Sachs, it's one of the reasons why we started the Bitcoin Reserve, because we want to start to put in motion the strategic importance of Bitcoin for the United States government. We know that the PRC doesn't like Bitcoin. The People's Republic of China doesn't like Bitcoin. Well, we should be asking ourselves, why is that? Why is our biggest adversary such an opponent of Bitcoin? And if the communist Republic of China is leaning away from Bitcoin, then maybe the United States ought to be leaning into Bitcoin. And that's one of the things that we're going to be doing.
Yeah, but it's still stuck in the status paradigm. This versus now and all this nonsense.
Yeah.
But that's not a vice president standing up here and talking at you. The way that Bitcoin is involved in the strategic future of our country, that's got to be a two-way conversation. And so when I talk about getting involved in politics, one of the things that you guys got to do is continue to give us feedback and continue to tell us the ways in which Bitcoin can play a positive role in the strategic future of this country. I know the Bitcoin Policy Institute is working on this very topic now, but all of you have got to be involved in this conversation, because I don't think any of us want to wake up in a country 10 years.
What would you tell him?
About?
Well, he wants your input.
I wasn't paying attention. What did he say? What does he want my input on? I'm sorry. Like I have a really hard time focusing on this guy. It takes tremendous bandwidth for me.
Yeah, policy stuff. What, how should the United States?
The best policy is no policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Free
best
markets.
politicians, no politician.
I like Sailor. Somebody was asking him about the government, and he's like, "What do you think the government should be doing, or what do you think about government?" He's like, less.
Yeah.
Just less.
That's the only answer.
Yeah.
From now that is less wealthy and less prosperous because we made bad decisions today. We're going to make the right decisions, but that depends on you guys being part of the conversation. So be part of that conversation. And here's the third thought that I want to leave you with. One of the ways you hear this stated is that crypto is fundamentally a conservative or right-leaning technology, and artificial intelligence is fundamentally a left-leaning or a communist technology. Now, I think that overstates things a little bit in both directions, but...
You want to hear it again?
Well, yeah, what was that?
And here's the third thought that I want to leave you with. One of the ways you hear this stated is that crypto is fundamentally a conservative or right-leaning technology, and artificial intelligence is fundamentally a left-leaning or a communist technology.
Okay.
Let's hear it. Oh my God, I'm excited.
Tools are not moral or political. They don't have any political agenda. AI doesn't even see or understand what you mean when you say left, right. Crypto is not left, right. It's just totally nonsensical. It's like saying that, the hammer is evil or the hammer is good. The AI is good or the AI is evil. It's like, no, it's just the user imparts the morality into the tool, right? If you use the hammer to build the house, well, that's good and constructive. If you use it to bash a skull, well, that's probably bad.
Yeah.
So this is all just utter nonsense.
What came to mind after spending a little more time with you, you talk a lot about human action, and something that you said in a podcast, I don't know, the last couple of months is like, belief as this idea of like a set of verbal propositions. Mm-hmm. So when he's like, yeah, tell us what you think. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking like, well, it's the actions that's taking place that matters.
Right. Yeah.
Like as people are selling down all of these inferior or defective assets and putting their money into Bitcoin, that speaks louder than words.
Way louder than words ever could. You could say it. They say this a lot of different ways. Taleb says, don't tell me what you think, just what's in your portfolio. We also say actions speak louder than words. Well, you know what speaks louder than actions? Capital at risk. Mm-hmm. Because capital at risk is the culmination of many, 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 many actions.
Yes.
To get that capital to put at risk.
Yes.
Right? So this is nonsense. Yeah. This guy is talking utter rhetorical nonsense.
Yeah.
Crypto is scammy for sure, but is it left? Is it right? It's anyone who identifies with any political ideology whatsoever that wants to steal your shit, which is basically all of them.
Yep.
Right? AI is neither left nor right. AI is, so far as I can tell, mostly just large language models at this point, and people are using it, but it's not. I guess it can be programmed and politicized. If you run OpenAI and you run ChatGPT, you could tell this thing to be extra wokeified and give extra woke answers.
Which seems to actually
but that doesn't mean the tool itself, what you're saying, AI is like a large language model is inherently left-leaning. That's not true. The designer might be able to tilt it left or tilt it right.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make large language models inherently political.
Now, I think that overstates things a little bit in both directions, but there's a fundamental element of truth to it. Now, I haven't been involved in the day-to-day operations of a technology company in about 4 years since I entered politics for the very first time. But what I've noticed is that very smart right-wing people in tech tend to be attracted to Bitcoin and crypto, and very smart left-leaning people in tech tend to be more attracted to AI. Again, that's a gross generalization, it's an overstatement, but there's an element of truth to it. But what I'd ask you all is to remember that what happens in AI is very much going to affect, in good and bad ways, what happens to Bitcoin.
No, it's not. Other than if it increases productivity, it makes Bitcoin's purchasing power go up, which makes its price rise faster. It doesn't change anything about the consensus rules of Bitcoin whatsoever. It's complete nonsense.
Well, it also increases that like Veblen good effect too. As the price increases, people are more attracted to it.
That's right. Yeah. Right. The self-reinforcing price rise of Bitcoin, basically. Yeah.
And of course, what happens to Bitcoin is very much going to affect what happens in AI. So while this is certainly a Bitcoin conference, and I know we're all proud of what you guys have accomplished over the last 10 years, my final piece of advice is to make sure you're keeping tabs on and staying involved in what's happening with artificial intelligence, because I don't want Bitcoin to be negatively affected by what happens in AI. And most importantly, I don't want America to be negatively affected by what happens in AI. And the best way to ensure that smart people are at the AI conversation is to ensure that Bitcoin is part of the artificial intelligence conversation. Our administration is committed to it. I want you guys to be committed to it as well.
I don't understand what he's even saying.
Neither does he.
I just want to say in the next few years in the Trump administration, we've accomplished a lot, but we have plans to continue to make big progress for this industry and for the American people who rely on it. The whole of government, we're going to need your help. We're going to need your guidance. We're going to need your encouragement. And at times, yes, because this is politics, our politicians are going to need your pressure. So have fun this week, but keep the pressure up. And we'll do great things together for our industry, but most importantly, for the cause of personal freedom and the United States of America. God bless you guys, and thanks for having me.
And have fun playing with your Bitcoins. It's your Trump. You probably didn't even listen to Trump's speech.
No, I haven't heard it.
No. You're good at guarding yourself from
oh, wait,
stupidity.
you mean in Nashville?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I was actually there.
Yeah.
I was at Nashville. No, I somehow went last minute and got shuttled up to the front row.
Really?
I was front row with that thing, yeah.
Uh-huh.
But same deal. It's just
yeah.
Okay, that was painful. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. I both appreciate the fact that it's happening, but it's also so annoying. And I also have a tendency to think that these people have a greater understanding than maybe they do. I'm like, oh, they get it, and this is all a big game. But listening to him, I don't know how much he really gets it.
I don't think that's smart, honestly. Why else would they be in this line of work? They're good at being manipulative and sociopathic and rhetorical, but they're not very intelligent. I mean, that's a form of intelligence, I guess, from that. But I don't think they're grokking the profundity of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
When I feel my brain cells dying listening to them, that's enough anecdotal evidence for me to know that, I don't know else.
Well, thanks for watching. We're going to go take some Mind Lab Pro.
Yeah.
After all of that, and maybe take a shower with a abrasive scrub of some sort.
Can we listen to someone smart next?
Yeah, some sea salt in the. Yeah, let's do it.
Because I'm down to talk. I'm down to talk.
We got
what we
Mike,
just heard.
the executive producer plus.
Producer plus, you can just call
you do add quite a bit of value there. So how was that? You're sitting there just brain rot or whatever? You're squirming in your seat a little bit, dude. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, as you guys can imagine, it's a genuine challenge to remain quiet. So I'm happy here to experiment on some new formats with the guys because. Man, it really is true that it's I think the best way to actually deal with politicians is to assume the opposite.
And seriously. And you could tell, and waiting for the moments when he actually sounds genuine and the veneer kind of slides off, and he's actually really speaking from the heart, the opposite of that. So, you know, they're going to do all the different sort of wham flam and making themselves, flattering the communities, belittling the enemies, signifying in-group behaviors, right?
Yeah.
And then they're going to tell you, they're going to say, hey, now that we've set up that we're on the same team here, this is what I think really should happen and what we're going to go through. And then they go and they think, nice, everybody thinks that.
Yeah.
And they go and do the freaking opposite. So I would say from this takeaway, I would say that all of the stuff about freedom that he's talking about, all of the feedback that he's talking about is all a trap. It's all them trying to ingratiate themselves as much into the community, invade the community as much as possible, get their political tendrils into it, and start to break it apart bit by bit, because it is fundamentally one of the few things that challenges them.
Yeah. Well, if Bitcoin does what it looks like it's doing, Bitcoiners are going to be very powerful, and they're going to need to cater to the Bitcoin community. And this idea about all these policies and the government Operation Choke Point 2.0, we're getting rid of that. Like, well, Bitcoin doesn't care.
Money is superordinate to law, and what the government does is either, I don't know, good for the government and like preserving itself, for maybe giving itself more runway by adopting Bitcoin. But it does seem, I don't like to talk in certainties. I find myself doing that often as a Bitcoiner, but it seems that like it is very probabilistically inevitable that the whole world reorganizes itself around Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, it just then what shape does it take, and does that pressure shift the values of the community, at least, that's surrounding it?
Because something also just on that last note where he was saying, Bitcoin is right wing and AI is left wing, which is just such absolute, like, it really reveals how little he really understands, or just how simple his worldview is from a certain perspective. It's like you have to be very reductive in your thinking.
Well, he's very political minded.
Very right. So
he's
this binary,
right, left,
he's like left, right. And I personally, I'll just leave it at this. I think the mark of intelligence is you're able to understand a spectrum, and every another point on that spectrum, the finer the number of shades of gray, if you will, between white and black that you can recognize, the more subtle and perceptive and capable of a person you are. I'll just leave it at that. If he just thinks it's black and white. But wait, so the bigger picture there was that, because AI has tremendous potential to be utilized in a right-wing way and in a left-wing way. And I'd say all of the rails that, like the woke rails are, you put it on I put woke in quotation marks there. You take, in the broad spectrum of things, that's actually pretty right wing. Here you have this model that is trained on every conversation ever, in theory.
And then you have it so that it can't say certain things. You're going to immediately already fully censor this thing.
Yeah.
Say, adult stuff is, look, I mean, would people do terrible things with it? Yeah, but people write terrible fan fictions. People draw terrible things. To me, just any of the rails that they put on it at all is something that's inherently censorship, which is
traditionally a signifier of like a fascistic or authoritarian regime.
Yeah, that's it's the centralization. You have a central group of people that can sway what the LLMs are spitting out and whatnot. Exactly. And I guess I'll leave it, my final thought here. The only reason I give an F about any of this stuff is because I'm constantly trying to figure out what the future looks like, what kind of transition we're going through. Do we have a peaceful, smooth transition to a Bitcoin abundant future, or is there just an absolutely cataclysmic, apocalyptic meltdown? And that's what I don't want. So when I hear them talking about Bitcoin and the Bitcoin treasury, I get kind of excited from that perspective. Like, okay, maybe there's something that can unfold in a way where like we transition it in a way where as few people as possible get hurt. And so
you're saying looking at the proliferation of Bitcoin as effectively harm reduction.
Yeah,
That's interesting. That's a really cool way of looking at it.
Yeah.
You know, this idea of having hyperinflation and like governmental collapse and all of that stuff. It would be nice if that happens peacefully, however that is. So,
Yeah, well, we can only hope. Yeah, things tend to find a fall in the middle, so there'll probably be good parts, and there'll probably be parts that are slowly falling apart.
well, and that is happening now. I mean, one of the things that just
Kind of tears me up at times is like there are so many people who are suffering because of this Keynesian economic garbage. And I'm excited to see that change.
Me too, man. Thanks for letting me hop in on the end of this.
Yeah, man.
Check out What Is Money Show on YouTube, Breedlove 22 on Instagram. We got Eric Stacks on X, right?
Yep,
That's
Eric V.
just
Stacks.
Eric V. Stacks. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. And we're going to keep doing more reaction content like this, not just about the Bitcoin conference, but about goings on in general. So thanks for tuning in.
Like, subscribe, leave a comment.
We got a mailing list, all that stuff. So it's going to be in the show notes, and please take a look.
And stack sats and chill.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.